There's just a limit to how much we can just apply the rubric of processes into a 21st century, high velocity, AI powered, every day it's something new kind of business. So folks are fatigued by change.
Hi, I'm Andrew Williams, founder of SecondWave Advisors and author of the book, SecondWave Life. I think you'll enjoy today's guest, and thank you for checking out the podcast. If you like what you hear, please use the link in the description to learn more. John LoDuca, founder and owner of Playbook Builder.
Hey there.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast, and appreciate your time today.
No, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. 23 years ago, I had this kooky idea. I'd build an intellectual capital development firm. Okay. And Andrew, I had a hell of a time explaining it to people, especially my in-laws. They just thought I was nuts, and 23 years later, and this is a conversation that's really timely. And so it's fun catching up with you. And
your in-laws still think you're nuts?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Well, when they ask you today, do you just keep it at, I own a software business? What do you tell people you do for work?
Well, yeah, back in the old days before Playbook Builder, we did this stuff analog. My focus was to identify, package, and monetize what we argued was an entrepreneur's greatest asset and competitive advantage, their wisdom. That is intellectual capital. It's an asset class like any other. Exit Planning Institute, we call it structural capital, but we were doing this in an analog capacity, and along the way built Playbook Builder to transfer that knowledge. And yes, when making it transferable, protects valuation. When we talk about this in certain ecosystems, we talk about process, we talk about knowledge transfers. But for my in-laws, they just thought, he's a consultant, we don't get it. Now he's a software entrepreneur. Okay, that we understand what that means. But it's been a fun ride. There's $100 trillion in motion. Everyone's talking about this now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good timing. Is that the easiest way to explain it? When your friends ask or your kids ask, what do you tell them?
Me today? Yeah. Playbook Builder is a knowledge transfer platform for small business intellectual property.
Absolutely. All right. You're here with Playbook. You founded Playbook Builder how many years ago?
Years ago. 2009, we stood up our first version of it, attached it to a consultancy, and grew it along slowly, just attached to a consultancy, and took it out for a spin in 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you go back and warn or encourage 20-year-old John, what would you tell him?
Yeah, that's a great question. I saw that creeping in. Honestly, I would probably say embrace the adventure that life is. I was tied up around, making sure everything would work. And it's all the bumps and scrapes. I don't think wisdom comes from sanitized lifestyles. You don't get it being West Michigan nice. You don't get it by living in a bubble. You get it by getting scar tissue. And so knowing that on the onset would have made me feel more bold and more durable and not fear mistakes. It's just, I look back and it's all the fun stuff was the things that didn't go well, or the surprises or the hardships. Those are the things I'm the most proud of. Yeah.
That's great advice. That's great advice. So you spun Playbook Builder out of another business. Yeah. Tell me about that. Where were you then, and how did the light bulb go on that, hey, I may be onto something else in this side hustle?
Yeah, so I had a really good exit from a .com I was a part of in Ann Arbor, Michigan, a little twerpy little company. I was like number 12, and we sold it for $250 million in a couple of years, and I got to see the whole ride. And I'd like to tell you it was my business.
All you're doing?
Yeah. No, I was just a young guy in my early 20s, lucky enough to be successful at sales. And so I got to sit close to leadership and see what was going on. And these were such good leaders, quality people with really good values. And I watched the way they managed knowledge in the organization. They kept everybody kind of around the corporate, campfire, so to speak, with storytelling and things like that. And when we vested, I got married, we moved to Chicago, and I built an intellectual capital company. And we got attached to Strategic Coach. So Dan Sullivan, it's the biggest blessing of my career. made us the go-to team for his clientele. So top 1% income earning entrepreneurs were my clients. And man, they were so smart and so cool. And I learned so much serving them. Their, primary focus at the time, Strategic Coach's kind of overemphasis was in financial services. So one of my first clients was John DeMonda. He was running the Northeast Territory for Lincoln Financial. He had about 175 reps under him, and he hired me to build the practice management process for him. And it was super fun because I didn't know a damn thing. I couldn't spell insurance, much less had any. I was just like, sure, and I dove right in, and he had to teach me, which was really valuable because it got him into learner's mind again, to explaining it to a knucklehead like me. But my value was in being curious and helping him kind of architect that thing. Well, they tapped John to run all of LFA. So sort of overnight, I became like the horse whisperer for top 10 producers on every platform. And I saw what's ironic is so many of the CEPAs, come out of that industry. Well, I was dealing with the problem that their clients have, which is owner dependency. I'd meet the financial advisor who had built a fabulous business, but it hit sort of like the vertical limit of the business model. They just didn't have any more hours in the week and they needed to transfer wisdom so they could scale. So I was doing that for them. Lo and behold, now we do it for the clients that are trying to exit.
Wow. What a fortuitous turn of events, eh?
Yeah, it's funny, God moves in mysterious ways.
That's the truth. That's the truth. All right, so we met via the EOS community, and Playbook Builders, this is a horrible pun, forgive me. You're getting tremendous traction in the EOS community between implementers and businesses running on EOS. How did that all start? What was the catalyst for that, and how is that relationship taking off now?
Yeah, that's been a real blessing too. I mean, another happy accident. An EOSI, we moved from Chicago to the west coast of Michigan, and an EOS implementer, Jim Coyle. I think he's been a guest on your podcast. A heck of a guy and a real OG.
Heck of a guy. That's exactly right.
Yep, he's a real OG in the EOS community. He cold called me and we hired him. And we brought in EOS. I knew Gino through Strategic Coach. And so I had some faith and confidence in the platform, had read the book and liked it and thought we could use this. That was the extent of it. What came out of it was Jim's awareness that while EOS really has 6 components, the redheaded stepchild in that equation is process. And we had built Playbook Builder, and he said, you have to bring this into EOS. We really need this kind of a solution for clients. Yeah. And thank goodness, because this is one of those examples of life being an adventure. We brought Playbook Builder in the EOS community and caught fire in the ecosystem. Now, a few hundred of the EOSIs worldwide use our platform and recommend us to clients. They even use us at headquarters. We're the software they use internally for the process component. And they coach their coaches. So there's a layer in there of about 100 of the EOS implementers, and they teach the rest. They use Playbook Builder to do it. So it's neat to be serving in this operating system type community. There's about 300,000 worldwide that run on EOS in some capacity. And we solve one of the pieces that I think unleashes most of the scale, most of the sanity, most of the valuation opportunity for the business owner is the process piece. Ironically, it's that structural capital. Once the entrepreneur can take tribal knowledge and transform it into structural capital, that really serves the transition. That's really, it survives a transition that way. Otherwise, it's just in people's heads.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, the first time I became aware of Playbook Builder, I was at the Dallas QCE, right? So you got 750 implementers in the room, and Coyle's repping a Playbook Builder baseball cap, and I'm like,
"What's that?"
What are you doing? He goes, "Holland, company based in Holland. Come see me after this. You got to meet these guys."
Cool.
That's awesome the way that
That's
is
a
worked.
neat story. Yeah, well, we caught fire because we're so like-minded about this journey the entrepreneur takes. I saw it from the standpoint of owner dependency and a reluctance for succession planning because of that fear of the business collapse. The owners know they haven't transferred the wisdom, and they're the linchpin. And so what we saw was dad won't leave. Everybody wants dad to leave, and the bugger won't walk because he knows the kids are going to be in dire jeopardy if he leaves the business in their hands. He's been so busy doing, he hasn't been working on the business and he hasn't been transferring knowledge, and the place is in jeopardy. So I meet you and it was like a house on fire. Like our alignment of those problems with the transition, I saw one side of it, you saw the other. Yeah, it was a pleasure to see Second Wave be birthed. It's been a really fun relationship for your listeners. I've known Andrew through the last year and a half or so.
Yeah.
Really neat to know you now when so much is popping.
How many times have someone told you, oh, yeah, that probably works for everybody else, but like my business is different and too complex, and there's no way that we can really document our processes.
Yeah, I got mouthy about this one. The truth of the matter is, most of the people that did most of the thinking and writing and speaking and talking about process are gurus, the Mount Rushmore, the experts. Who is that? That's Adam Smith, Division of Labor, Frederick Winslow Taylor, he was the stopwatch guy. Sloan and Ford, they did automotive, and then the Japanese, Taiichi Ohno and Shinego Shingo, they did lean manufacturing with Deming. All these guys are dead. They were brilliant, but they lived on the wrong side of the digital divide. And it's a very different world today. We can't run the playbook on process the way that it was taught to us. Even Michael Gerber, I love Michael. I've spent time with him in Carlsbad. He wrote E-Myth in 1986. Gino Wickman didn't have a smartphone when he wrote Traction. No matter how right these guys were, there's just a limit to how much we can just apply the rubric of process, as in air quotes, into a 21st century, high velocity, AI powered, every day it's something new kind of business. So folks are fatigued by change. And I just don't think that it's a tenable approach the way it's been taught. The softwares haven't helped. They come out of academia and they're just sort of like this paradigm that's silly. If you're going to get your CPR credit, they totally make sense. You learn it, you know it, you do it over and over again, and you're done every year, you get your CPR credit. That's how a lot of these softwares function with that same idea. It's not real. So that's one of the reasons that I think it's been hard for small business. They don't believe in it.
So when you get that objection, like what's the first process you would have somebody document? How do you help the light bulb come on and help somebody to have that aha moment?
Well, I'm a pragmatist about it. I don't believe there's sort of like a right process for every business. Most of the
Okay.
companies I talk to are running with some kind of KPIs or a scorecard, and I tell them, go there. If it's off track for 2 weeks, it's a who or a how, and chances are it's a how. If you haven't set that person up to be successful, you can't blame the person. It's on you. So validate there's a process, you've trained them, you've given them the resources and tools to be successful, and then now you can hold the person accountable because you've set the table and given them every opportunity. But most of the time what I see is leaders are like, it might be them, it might be them, it might be us, we're not really sure, let's kick the can, and every week it's the same thing. So where do you start? It's just like when your kids are in the back car of the car and they're yelling and screaming on a family vacation and you're like, don't make me pull the car over. I tell clients, if numbers are off track for 2 weeks, pull the car over. Like whatever the hell's going on, like get to the bottom of it. It's probably a process issue that's just been buried. And you need to uncover it, clarify it, and solve that one first. And it actually gets addictive because usually those KPIs are tracking stuff that's sexy. Grow top line, increase margin, drive throughput. It's the stuff we pay attention to. So when you pick off those, there's like this, hey, maybe process doesn't suck. And people get like addicted to tackling the next one and the next one. And that's the best way to look at it. Very pragmatic, very, business focused. And oftentimes, if we can solve for top line, we uncouple the entrepreneur themselves because usually, this history. I come in, I'm a technician, I'm good at everything. I hit the ceiling, I start hiring people as helpers, and I hit another ceiling where it doesn't matter, I'm still stuck, but I'm doing most of the sales. I hire people who can do the fulfillment of what I can sell. And until they can extract themselves from sales, they can't scale. And so that's owner dependency writ large. And so the one that often is the key is sales in some capacity or another. If we can get the owner out of being the face of the place and the reason people buy, the place unlocks.
Awesome.
Has that been your experience?
It's 100% my experience. And I think that, we were talking before the camera rolled here about EPI statistics related to
Yeah,
80% of businesses go to market don't sell. That's not my experience as an M&A advisor because
right.
I talk to those business owners and I just tell them that don't do this now.
Yeah,
Don't sell this company now.
yeah.
You know, here's the people you need to talk to. Here's what you can do. But if you ask me, hey, Andrew, hire me to sell my company today, I'm telling you no, because it's you're wasting. You're not doing yourself justice. It's not the right time for you. But you
It's
can fix
crazy.
it.
During like the 2008 crisis, I had this heavy book of clients that were wealth managers, and I couldn't believe how many of them were selling at the bottom of the market. These are guys who spent their careers guiding people again, with behavioral finance mindset away from making emotional decisions about buying at the bottom or selling at the bottom or buying at the top. And yet they were doing it. They were they were selling during a crisis. They were like, I'm out of here. And we just saw so much of this emotional behavior. It's heartbreaking. I think most small businesses, aren't too small to sell. They're just too owner dependent to transfer. And so they if they don't do this stuff proactively, they get stuck. I mean, enterprise value is what? It's just risk adjusted future cash flows. So anything that reduces operational risk increases the valuation potential. It preserves that captured, value in the business. The
So
wisdom
so
is
well
often
said.
that
Yeah.
that piece.
Well, and this is that that paragraph right there. That right here, right now, as 2025 comes to an end. That's all playing out as um, 75% of the business of the private equity transactions last year they attribute to roll up activities. In other words, lower middle market private equity firms go and they buy a
Yep.
platform
Yep.
and then they start buying up they call them add-ons or bolt-ons,
Yep.
which means no one, no business is too small to be sold to a private equity firm. Okay. So, for example, I know I looked into this for a client the other day. I found 15 private equity firms trying to roll up HVAC services businesses. So, if you started
Yeah.
20 years ago, you have a refrigeration and heating business, and you got 8 technicians, and you got 8 vans on the road in West Michigan.
That's right.
You there is a private equity firm calling you right now.
You bet.
Okay, if you have a single location oil change shop, there is private equity firms coming for you. Heaven forbid you should own a car wash, because then you probably have people beating down your door, right?
That
So
was maybe that was a few years ago. I think that was really hot. Is that still hot?
that's still very, very high.
Is it really? Yeah, I've
Very,
got
very.
a private equity firm. They own 50 HVAC companies. And they want exactly what a PE firm wants. They want standardization across the portfolio. So buy side, sell side, everybody seems to want the same thing out of this.
Yes.
De-risk the profile and make it so that it can scale or at least preserve the fundamentals while it's being transferred. I think every buyer is secretly terrified of three things. What happens when you take the leader out of there? Is the team going to function with new leadership, and what kind of landmines are hiding in operations? I mean, those are the things. Yeah, I don't think that small businesses are. I don't believe that those statistics are necessarily true of small business not being able to be sold. I just think they maybe do it too late in the game, where they're not prepared well, and they do it emotionally. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do with trying to do some version of market timing. I think, we were talking about boomers once before. You remember? We're saying that
Right.
identification with the business is so strong, where younger generations may be a little less emotional about identifying with the business. But you take someone who's
Absolutely.
been doing it for 30 years, and what the hell are they going to do after they sell it? They don't know what or who they are.
I can help with that, right?
I know.
That's second wave advisors. That's second wave life. I
That's
have this.
why I set the ball.
I know that was a nice softball you just kind of lobbed in there for me, right?
Yeah.
I had this conversation twice this week with a business owner in Elkhart, Indiana, and a business owner in LaPorte, Indiana, and both of them said the same thing. Their spouse wants them to exit, and
Yes.
they don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And so, what I thought was what I thought was a 45-minute conversation about here's my sell side M&A services to help you sell your company turns into a 2-hour conversation about how do I how do I know I have this farm and I have a whole bunch of cows, but I think I'm going to get bored with that.
Right.
Uh, so
I
um,
worked with. I'm sorry, you needed to finish
Go
your.
ahead.
I was just going to say to tie into what you're getting at. I was working with John Wepler at Marshberry a few years ago,
Okay.
and I liked their model. They'd come in early and really coach, mentor, and guide so that they could time the market and optimize the business. And what often happened was because the place stopped being such a dumpster fire, the owner wanted to stay a little bit longer. And they could leave when it was optimal, not under duress, not as a Hail Mary, not because they basically felt like they couldn't do another morning, another Monday of chaos. And that's a much different,
That's an entirely different place to be.
it is. So just energetically coming to the table to negotiate when you're not selling a damaged asset. What is when knowledge is invisible, then risk is invisible. And buyers price risk, invisible risk pretty aggressively,
You bet.
right? I
You
mean, that's
bet.
just like a latent concern. You're selling this thing under duress. Like, what's hiding under the covers? I had a client one time, wealth management firm. They thought they were buying a book of business. This guy had basically been an absentee landlord. It was a wealth management firm to
Okay.
wealth management firm. They had to repaper all of the accounts.
Sure.
There wasn't much left. No one had been attending to these accounts. There wasn't really anything there they could really utilize because
Okay.
this guy had basically been asleep at the switch for years.
Yep.
No
Wow.
documentation, no clarity around that. The team were in shambles. Most of the transition stuff that I saw in M&A, it wasn't deal points that held them back. It was trying to figure out what CRM system to use for 6 freaking months. It was just the transfer of how do we do things, just as simple
Okay.
as everyday stuff. Yeah, it's a time bomb
Interesting.
for the buyer if you're not careful. And so I think for the owner, and I think this is the value proposition for what you're talking about with Second Wave, not having a vision means you just keep doing what you know.
Right.
You sell
Right.
it then under duress and you take a beating if you're able to sell it at all, right?
Yeah. All right. So there's got to be you got to be like 2 or 3 main reasons that people are resistant to document process.
Yeah.
Um, I I in my manufacturing business, I remember talking to a guy about um, if this process is critical to a product line that we were having a lot of success with, and we had no procedure for it. And I
Yeah.
said, show me how you know how to run this process. And he just said,
Yeah.
and I go, okay, but surely we have something written down. He goes, no, that's called job security. You can't fire me. It's all in my head. Okay. Uh,
I hear that very rarely from A
do
players.
you?
Interesting. Yeah, because A players hate being
Because
on.
those companies are better run than mine.
Well, I'm not trying to be cheeky. I'm just saying I think A players hate being on B teams. And so they do
Ah, I
want to
like
lift
that.
up the rest of the players. It's super inconvenient for an A player who loves performance and optimization and kicking butt and winning championships. They hate B players. They find that stuff really irritating. And the complaining that I hear is the OGs, the guys that knew how to run the equipment, take it apart and put it back together again. The young guys
Yes.
just they're like buy a new one. It's broken. There's so much need that they have to train, mentor, and guide these guys. And as they get older, I actually find A players are encouraged to do that. It's kind of a B player move to be petty. The A
Sure.
guys, the real badasses, those guys are magnanimous. They want to bring other people up. I've not had that issue. What I have had, this won't surprise you, is you cannot read the label from inside the jar. Oftentimes they suffer from an overuse of humility. They're like, I don't know, it seems like common sense to me. Well, Cupcake, you've been doing it for 40 years. I'm sure at some point it wasn't, but now you've normalized it. And so that's the issue is you can't see it anymore. So it's hard for them to do it for themselves. That's a big barrier.
So there's the element we've been talking about in terms of documenting the process, and
Yeah.
then the what you just alluded to a moment ago is acquirers looking at businesses and asking the question, how do we scale? How are we
That's it.
going to take this and grow this?
Yeah. Well, there's a
How
J
our
curve,
playbook,
right? There's a J
what's that?
curve. You accept some risk, but how do you mitigate that? That's
Yeah.
the question on the table. And if those landmines are hiding in the invisible, how do we make it tangible? How do we make it something you could put your hands on during due diligence and see what you're buying? That's what's the. I mean, you can put your hand on a piece of equipment, but you can't put your hand on somebody's know-how, the secret sauce, the how he closes those deals. Gee shucks. But we've hacked it. We figured out how to do it, and a lot of it was narrative based. Process is a bad word. I say it's a bad word because it's one of those like big buckets you can put a ton of ideas into. What the hell does it actually mean though? So let's just set it aside. Process is a flow of work. It serves for clarifying sequencing. What goes first, second, and third, and what are those steps? What is the anatomy of the process? But
Yes.
beyond that, it gets down to the procedure layer and that style. And that's usually informed by values, unconscious or conscious. Typically, the why behind the how is where all that wisdom lives. Somebody's worldview shapes the way they do it.
Yes.
Grandma in the kitchen making pies. You can get the recipe, it's not the same thing as being shoulder to shoulder with Granny.
Right.
Why? Tribal knowledge, the tacit and the explicit, you get the nuances of how she makes the crust, but she's also telling you stories of what your dad was like as a little boy. And all that gets wrapped up together into the learning experience. It makes it really sticky, and unconsciously or unwittingly, you're picking up her entire worldview. We used to call it apprenticeship in this country.
Right.
It
Right.
wasn't that long ago that you'd work with the master and it would rub off on you the way they think and the way they do everything. The way they detail their car on the weekends has a lot to do with the way they showed up at the shop. And at scale, it's hard to do that. And at the speed of light, it's impossible. So that was
Stay
what we
there.
were up against.
Stay there with that analogy with grandma and the pies.
Sure.
How's Playbook Builder going to approach that challenge?
Yeah.
What are the unique elements? I know some element of what the software is capable of doing and all the ways your clients are leveraging it. But
Yeah.
how we documenting grandma's pumpkin pie recipe process?
Yeah. Well, it starts with a story. Many years ago, I was doing this kind of work analog. So you'd send me in, and I'd charge a fortune, and I'd sit with the CEO of some Fortune 100 company or some, extraordinary entrepreneur in whatever their industry is, somebody you've never heard of who's just amazing. And my job was to be ignorant, right? I was like a ghostwriter. I'd harvest and deconstruct how values shape their choice making and build a predictive model. And I got a phone call one day in the, I don't know, early 2000s, mid to late 2000s. Tom Ziegler called me. His dad, Zig Ziglar, was, a famous speaker and motivator. He's an incredible leader.
Yes.
And Tom called me because his dad had fallen down a flight of stairs. And this was kept from the public, but he had fallen down a flight of stairs, and just by the way his body landed when he got to the bottom, his trunk cast forward and his head hit the doorknob. And what they thought was just a normal, issue with a concussion became like this rapid cognitive decline. And it started out where, he'd get on stage and kind of lose his way telling stories, never happened before. Then he had just really get fatigued and he couldn't stand around, so they put him in a chair. Then he forgot like so much that they put his daughter on stage and she was interviewing him. And this is when Tom called me. And he was just sort of like, what do we have here that we can do? He had hired Seth Godin and he hired us to help with this. And I realized, I'd been listening to Zig since I was a kid. My dad had those Nightingale Conant books with the
Yes.
cassette tapes,
Yeah.
and I knew who he was. And I thought, oh my God, we should film him.
It's a national treasure, right?
National treasure. And honestly, where we transitioned, Playbook Builder became a perfect timing opportunity because video was emergent as a platform solution. The technology was finally there by the time we went, gosh, this is a way to play. So we began filming and interviewing our subject matter experts. And Andrew, this is one of the keys to unlock the power of this stuff. It's not expensive or difficult to do. Everybody's, got a really sophisticated camera in their back pocket. What we learned was by interviewing, you could shake loose the wisdom beyond just the recipe. So if the SOP is the recipe, ingredients, work instructions, just the basics, where's the style? Well, we'd interview them and they'd have to explain it. and you'd occasionally trigger them and get them ticked off asking a dumb question, and you'd get lectured and it would be gold. And we realized that that's apprenticeship. It's the same kind of dialectual between the student and the master. And my job was just to be the student. I'd go in, I'd interview, and they'd have to explain it. And sometimes they hadn't said those things or thought those things in 20 years. I learned
Just in there waiting to come out.
in there waiting to be unlocked through somebody activating it. And, you know, I became kind of a fan of entrepreneurism, and I realized my guys were 7 and 8 figure income guys, 30-year industry veterans, way out there on some crazy branch. You know what I mean? They had just, but really they started at the trunk of the tree like everybody else. It was just 30 years later, they'd made 1,000 decisions, and it brought them out to this branch where they're making a heck of a lot more than everybody else. They were doing things in a unique way, and they'd normalized it because it'd taken so long.
Yes.
You know, Darwin used to say that mutations come from offspring. The more offspring a species have, the more likelihood of mutations. And mutations, when they're favorable, they get repeated, right? It's the same thing for entrepreneurs. We just learn faster because we make a lot of decisions. So when you make a lot of decisions and you don't get paid for getting it wrong, you learn fast. And so you'd meet somebody 30 years out there, they'd made gazillions of decisions, had plenty of scar tissue, and yet it just felt like, you know, it was so long ago that they started to zig over away from the crowd that they had to go backwards into their narrative to find it. So that's what we would do. We'd start with, tell us about you and how you were raised and all these stories, and what you'd realize beautifully is that we're really a collection of values and worldview that shape everyday decision making. Once you hack
Hold
that,
on. Circle back. And how did the Zig Ziglar chapter of your experience close?
yeah, well, working with the family. So everybody trucked up to Chicago, and we advised them on exactly how to do this and helped with that content. And so it became kind of the new chapter for the company I owned, WisdomLink, and it became imperative that WisdomLink become attached to this playbook builder platform. We built the first version of the software and started filming folks. We realized if we could give it back to them in that portable format, that would be the way we could scale it. So that's what we did. And what a neat, you know, Tom is exactly what you'd expect. Tom Ziegler is exactly what you'd expect of every G2 owner. You know, he wasn't his dad's wild animal going out in the middle of the wilderness and discovering something new. He was the guy to get an MBA operationalized for scale. And so, you know, they lost the asset of that family, that generative force of innovation and ideation. They needed to be able to define that. You could see that the family was going to be in jeopardy without the ability to continue to perpetuate that. That's what every, you know, family is facing as the wicked, crazy, wild entrepreneur father is moving into the next chapter and exiting the business. How do we keep that spark alive and at least standardize the things that they learn so we don't lose them? Yes. Same exact thing. We did it over and over and over again with all kinds of other either family businesses or just regular organizations trying to scale. One point of failure was somebody exceptional, and how do you get it out of their head so it becomes a corporate asset?
Awesome. Yeah.
It's really rewarding.
What's that?
It was super rewarding.
Oh, I bet.
Being that in that place, it was just such a humble posture, right? We weren't in there like the consultants teaching. It was like, holy smokes, I can't believe I get to hang out with this guy for the day. It was amazing. Yeah.
Okay. You and I, when we first met, you had just returned from the Exit Planning Summit. You attended the one in Phoenix.
That's right.
So you know the SEPA world. You know what's going on in and around all things exit planning and this great. I'm saying this somewhat jaded today because I'm about to film another video about the silver tsunami that has never showed up.
Right.
But I mean, you know, you and I are both familiar with the same national demographics of business ownership and how the different generation or how the different demographics, right? Baby boomers, Gen X, millennials approach entrepreneurship differently and what's happening. Let's talk for a minute though about the SEPAs who are advising these folks that are trying to gain a toehold in this wonderful world of exit planning.
Right.
How are you seeing advisors? You in your career, plenty of advisor experience. What differentiates folks that are killing it in the advisory space versus folks that are just kind of trucking along day by day looking for their next client?
Right. So what I focused for most of my career was deconstructing how those values shape choices. And in a highly commoditized service business, like being a financial advisor, unique experience design is how you differentiate, right? You can't
Yep.
differentiate on pricing or product or even like the quality of your people. Like sometimes you have a celebrity or two, but for the most part, where you can really differentiate is the unique experience design. And to a large extent, I think what ends up happening is the advisor is waiting for the client, and actually the client needs to be led. The client needs a process that they can follow, and wisdom capture should be part of it. And what we've learned with most of our folks is that left to their own devices, I mean, people don't have time for this stuff, or they've done it and they're pissed because it didn't do anything good for them. It's just in the cloud somewhere. There's no economic benefit to them. They're like, we don't know why we did this, or they just don't get how to do it in the first place. So they need leadership. You know, like I said, the tenets of process design, the thinkers in the topic are all dead. They didn't live in this side of the digital divide. Those ideas are really, they're great. Much of that is just incredible wisdom, but it doesn't jive for today. So there needs to be leadership for the client if they're going to get this done. Left to their own devices, the tyranny of the urgent will always win. Small businesses don't get proactive. They've got dumpster fires. And so the way that we've been successful is by being leaders and actually giving them the tools and guiding them in it so that it's not like a to-do item with a lot of shame around it or something that you get to at the very end when you're in a mad rush to sell the place. But I learned this from Wepler at Marshberry. Those guys had a really nice model. They got in early. They did it while they were running with the entrepreneur. They were proactive enough that they could actually set them up to be really valuable. This was at a time when P&C firms were, 14. I think they were, 14x. I mean, they were doing pretty nice, numbers back then. And the truth of the matter is, they'd clean up everything, get the books looking good, operationalize the place so it ran really well, just basically be a resource to them, not at the finish line looking to opportunistically do a transaction, but proactively serving them along the way. That takes vision and leadership, and that's, I think, the way for the SEPA to create a lot of value is to really look at layering those things in and making sure structural capital is part of that conversation.
Yeah, heck of a lot easier said than done, right?
It's
I
it's
mean,
just about being the leader.
right. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done as a SEPA or an exit planner. It's what you all do right on a daily basis, and then keep going there in terms of the the foundational visionaries of process. Right, the first one I had ever read was Deming,
Sure.
but to the point of them being all no longer with us, and they also were doing that all on the other side of the digital divide, and you could never explain to Edwards Deming what AI is doing, right?
Not
How
only that,
how
but he
can
was
you?
dealing with like massive organizations with extraordinary resources.
Right.
You look at a small shop and there's just not somebody in the learning and development department filing their
No, it was
nails and reading about learning theory. Like,
right.
these organizations are running. Everybody's on fire with, so much going on and resource capacity is just not there for this. It's just like being the GC. The analogy is very apt. If the architect and the general contractor bring in subs with their own subspecialties to provide value with the construction project,
Yes.
and that's a way that this can work.
Yes. Oh, I love that. All right. So my passion is this idea.
Yeah.
We've got these two core oft quoted statistics in the SEPA world that 80% of the businesses that go to market don't sell. And 75% of those that do sell are then unhappy within 3 years that they sold. Right. So if you multiply those numbers together, that means if you're starting from square one as a business owner, statistically your outcomes are bad if left to your own devices.
Right.
Okay. If left to your own devices. Um, how have you seen this process of documenting, right? Was we're documenting what the business is, regardless whether it's a small business or some of the bigger corporations you've been able to work. How does that improve not just the business outcome, but the personal outcome? Why does
Yeah.
it matter?
So just to lay table stakes, Playbook Builder is an AI-powered knowledge transfer platform. So one of the key things that it's done because of the power of artificial intelligence is make the process of documentation and capturing very, very easy. Like the features in the platform are really, powered by these extraordinary technologies now. The real fuel is the wisdom of the business, but layered in the platform are tools to capture it, right? Like you
Yes.
can make a video in Playbook Builder and it turns it into a standard operating procedure with a click of a button. Like this stuff is so sci-fi cool these days. It's shaping the possibilities for time that the entrepreneur and the team believe it takes to do this stuff. So part of it is a bias they typically have that they're going to be writing down SOPs and it's going to take forever. And that's just not necessarily true. Or that they're going to buy stuff off the shelf and commoditize their own business. They won't actually capture the wisdom. It'll just be some crap that AI cooked up. Also a huge danger. They need to get their wisdom transferred. But, to your question about, is this really where are the blockages really, I guess is the question you're really getting at. Like where
Uh,
do they get stuck?
yeah.
It's there needs to be somebody on the team who owns this. Like we had to build a psychometric.
Wow.
We built like an assessment like you'd build like the Myers-Briggs or the
Yeah.
Colby score. We had to build one to help the teams find out who should champion the project. It's a process
Okay.
profile. It's like who's got a brain for this and could own this because it's not like they have a team that typically does it. So we gave them a tool that they could fill out a survey or have members of their tribe fill it out and go, "Oh, this is the person who's going to activate this."
This is the
This,
person. Yeah.
yeah, because it's just the biggest gap for them is they just need someone who is going to say, as a project, I'm going to tackle this. Now, in the EOS equation, we talk about rocks. That's your quarterly big project, and I tell people this isn't a rock. This is a business function like sales and marketing. Like we all
Yes.
agree it's important. Why are we like doing it once a quarter? Like, of course not. You're going to be doing it all the time. Nobody runs into a board meeting and says, I did sales this quarter. Like you're always doing sales. So you're always doing process a little bit and reframing it that way and letting them off the hook that this is some mad manic push relieves a lot of stress. We can just do a little bit at a time, way better for everybody. They need a who and they need to pace it out.
Yeah, look, we know for owners and leaders, delegating is hard. I love what you were talking about earlier in terms of the interviewing and how that allows you to functionally
Yep. So much
draw
faster.
down that secret sauce
Yep.
that you could never write down if you're writing down an analog SOP, right?
Yep.
Um, the question I was going to ask you, I think what you just answered. What I don't see owners driving that process change within small business, but you've got a metric, it sounds like, to decide to tell the owner who is the person on the team that really should be your process leader.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And I think part of it is also expectation setting. I mean, I have said this a lot, and I think it's a helpful um, analogy or metaphor. Every Monday, it's like there's a leak in the office and there's water all over the floor. And while you're trying to work, you got to bail water with a Dixie cup. Every flipping Monday, it's the same thing. You bail all day, you get to Friday, you kind of got it resolved, and then Monday morning, shit starts up again.
Yep.
And I tell people every time you write down a process, every time you transfer knowledge, every time you reduce risk or you eradicate variability or ambiguity because everybody knows how to do it the right way, you put a brick down. And it's not immediate, but one Monday you come in, you're like, hey, there's a little less water around here. That's what this is about. This is about step by step proactively picking off things that are going to reduce drag on the organization. And yeah, we can get addicted to, we just need more sales. Small business seems to think that's the panacea. Or we just need this unicorn employee. But most of the time what I found was everything that they need was in-house. It was just scattered and distributed unevenly. It wasn't in any one place. It was in Bob's head, it's in Judy's, it's like dust bunnies under the furniture. If we just get our hands on it, pretty much lead gen, conversion, and fulfillment would be solved. Maybe they
Okay.
needed to go outside the company for breakthroughs and innovation, but at least they could run their game plan well. And most of the time, Most of the time for small business, it's friendly fire. It's not the competitors who are kicking their butts. It's just the simple, stupid stuff they're just not doing. And the owner's having like a aneurysm because he figured that crap out 5 years ago. It's getting that guy to do it that way. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
this is the most common thing I've heard from owners this year, which is um, generally looking back, and again, yeah, we all dealt with our own level of turbulence during COVID, but generally, the past 13, 14 years post uh, Great Great Recession,
Yeah.
that business period has been pretty doggone good. It's been kind of up and to the right, and so
Yes.
I was talking to a guy who's in insurance. He's a sales leader in healthcare insurance.
Okay.
He's 38, and he said, "Hey, look, what you older guys need to remember is if people are my generation or below, we've never seen a down market.
Yep.
Okay, we don't know what difficult sales times look like." He goes, "What I'm wrestling with is I'm figuring out all I have is farmers. I don't have any hunters.
You
I
bet.
got a whole bunch of people that are great at taking calls from existing customers or new customers that came and said, 'Hey, I got referred because I know you all do great things.'"
This is so right. Very
Right?
true.
But how you seeing your clients leverage Playbook Builder to scale specifically their sales organizations in times where um, maybe it's not as easy as it has been recently to sell?
Yeah, it's a very good point. When I was active in that space, it was my sole focus practically. PE firms were buying RIAs because nobody could figure out how to grow them organically. It was the only way you could grow them is through
Buy,
acquisition.
buy the
And
book.
it was
Yep.
so ironic was you'd get these OGs, guys who were boomers and they were hunter killers. You're absolutely right. And they'd bring in these young guys out of college and they were so much smarter, polished, technically astute. They knew so much more about the actual job, but they couldn't hunt. And it was like, wow, what do we do here? How do we solve for this? And some folks have been successful sitting in their basement running social media ads and LinkedIn stuff and things like that to grow, but some of those old skills are valuable. We had a guy, his name is Solomon Hicks. And Saul Hicks was 83 years old when I met him, and boy was he a ton of fun. He was an OG insurance guy. First African American to be the number one guy at Prudential, and he's done like amazing stuff in his career. I think he's been like number one like 7 times. He's topped the food chain at
Yeah.
MDRT main stage speaker and all this stuff. He has a $50,000 keynote. He'd give his talk and try to sell his book. We put everything into Playbook Builder. There's a paywall in there. You can charge for
Right.
playbooks. And he
Yep.
was monetizing it. Well, his focus was the sort of disenchanted, disenfranchised fringe people in the insurance industry who weren't getting the love or the attention and needed different kind of training. These were, just different groups, minority groups, other groups he had a kind of a passion to serve, and built this Sales Beyond Measure training course to address this because
Awesome.
those skills are getting lost. They're just still valuable. Insurance, like a lot of things, still needs to be sold, but the skill sets aren't being handed over. I mean, not too long ago, you'd go work for like New York Life and they'd tell you how to shine your shoes, what kind of tie to buy. Now they give you a phone book and go, good luck, kid. And I saw it too because I'd see the small shops where the RIA founder, the owner, would be bringing in some young kid and he was either an idiot who couldn't do anything or he was a shark and after a couple of years he'd take a part of the book and go do his own thing
Do
and
his
leave
own
that
thing,
guy
right?
hanging. And it broke the guy's heart. It was like a son to him, you know what I mean? And you could just see the damage that was done. Well, no next hire is going to get that kind of love. The next kid that they hire, he was like, go figure it out on your own. You're probably going to leave me or be stupid.
Leave
So
behind.
I'm not mentoring you anymore. Yeah. Yeah. So it was a real issue that had come in, I saw happening at this age. I believe, though, Andrew, the down market hardening skill sets that are going to be needed are going to be the skills that Gen X and boomers still have because where we're at in a market, it's coming. And so having the ability to go out and just make it happen is going to be a very valuable skill set. And if AI is going to do anything for the marketplace, it's going to accentuate human capabilities.
Let's
Empathy,
keep going there.
insight, human skills. Well, I've got a penchant for the AI. I really like it. I sat on the board of an AI company in 2016. I gave a talk on AI in 2017. I've been interested in this a long time and been involved with it. Brought it into Playbook Builder very early. It still doesn't make me like a technophile. I'm still not hoping the robots come. I recognize we should be sovereign. Human capabilities and skills are going to become very valuable, though. If you go on YouTube, you know what they're teaching young guys? There's all these videos like, teaching young men how to communicate and how to talk to girls. I mean, there's a huge economy out there, about $450 billion in online learning. A lot of it is teaching human to human capabilities.
Emotional intelligence?
Huge.
Who knew, right?
You
Yeah, who
betcha.
knew?
And so I believe actually those skill sets, they're going to become very valuable. That's why there's such a huge consulting class of former advisors or, just executives who sold their business.
Yes.
Because there's still going to be a need for those hardier, more rugged entrepreneur skills, even in the sanitized, AI world. It's gonna come around. And I think there's gonna be another economy for the second wave of these guys to come back into the economy and provide leadership and guidance. We've talked about this book, and while it's crazy, it's amazing. It's founded in historical, know-how. It's the fourth turning. You remember us talking about that book?
You recommended this one to me. You bet.
Yeah. So for the listeners, these two guys wrote this historical book, and they recognized about thousands of years ago, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, the Romans had a term called the saeculum, and it was an age, and the French called it an epoch. And we basically have an idea that there's a period of time, 85 to 100 years, which is a lifespan. And these guys recognize, at least in the American experiment over here, every 85 years we go through a major cycle. So 2030, you go 85 years before that, it's World War II. You go 85 years or roughly backwards, it's the 1850s. You get the Civil War, and then 85 years before that, you get the American Revolution. You go back, you just keep finding these major transformations, and they articulated 4 archetypes, 4 generational types, and mine, Gen X, are the nomads. And we're supposed to age into maturity during a crisis. We're supposed to be, because we were so badly parented, we were latchkey kids, we had boomer parents, and so we're the tough guys who kind of know what to do when the what hits the fan. That was their argument. Man, is that ever fascinating timing that we're right on target, right in the next 5 years for another reinvention, which is a positive way of articulating it. They talk about it as a collapse and a rebirth. It doesn't have to be a complete economic collapse. I'm not that kind of pessimist, but I recognize some of the old lessons will become valuable. That wisdom, I'm excited about seeing it be monetized by my clientele. The guys that figured it out 20 years ago, they're going to have their heyday.
When you recommended that I read that book, I'm reading it saying, aha, this is fascinating to me, the way it overlaps with the stuff that Ray Dalio's throwing out there.
100%. You
And
bet.
you're going, okay, these are different sides of the same coin, but they're all pointing to the same
Massive
relative.
cycle. Yep.
Yeah, they're all pointing. I was just reading some of the things from the folks at ITR Economics this week. They're all pointing to the same period. This is kind of a known thing, and the ITR folks are saying, yeah, we're not, like what you just said, we're not pessimists by nature. We're just saying
Let's
these
be
are
sober.
forces, yeah, just not anything you're going to do to stop it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, demographics is something that you really can't fight, like death and taxes. It's just going to happen.
It just is.
Yeah,
There's nothing
boomers, I
you're
think.
going to do to impact the outcome of China's one-child policy, 60 years ago. Right?
It's
These
100%.
things are coming for you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so
okay, so but
what I see that has done is it's created this second economy of wisdom and monetization opportunities for folks who lived through those difficult times to create training, resources, guidance, stewardship for younger leaders, younger entrepreneurs. And
hey,
I think that's where it's at.
this is a great conversation you and I had previously that I've continued to think on. Um, you know, in the past, um, there are trade secrets. So if you're a manufacturing business
Yes.
and you figure out a way to make something so well and so much better than the competition, so much better than the market, you know what you don't do is patent it.
That's right.
Because once you patent it, you throw it into the public realm and it's yours, but it's only yours for 17 years.
That's right.
Okay.
And it's hard to defend.
So you and I got in the conversation one night about what AI does is take everything that's known, and now we all have access to everything that is known and is out there.
Yes.
Um, so, there, by necessity, the wisdom and the type of um, knowledge that you're helping clients capture,
Is a
it is
defensive position
it is
against commoditization.
necessary to keep that unknown,
That's right.
to keep it unknown.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you throw it onto your server or you throw it onto the internet,
Yeah.
and it can very easily become known. I think one of the beauties of Playbook Builder is keeping that um, reserved for the company and reserved for who the entrepreneur wants to have that knowledge. Um, go there with me.
I'm going to reframe this. I don't totally agree with your stance on this. I'm going to reframe
Okay.
it in a way I think you'll find interesting.
Okay.
I heard this story many, many years ago, and I think it's a good way to look at it. Talking about protecting wisdom, talking about protecting that intellectual capital. During World War II, the Russian soldiers ran out of soldiers, and they were trying to sack Berlin. And so they needed to recruit these just nomads off the steppes, the Mongolians. They threw them into uniforms and they enlisted them with the fear of death to come and help sack Berlin, which was at the time like the most technologically advanced city in the West. I mean, it was just like unbelievable, right? So here are these guys who live in yurts, who ride horses, and have never seen anything like this. They're running around Berlin and there's toilets that flush and sinks that have water. Well, these guys were like, I'm taking this shit home to my mom or my wife. They were ripping sinks out of the walls. And they were going to bring them back to the yurt. And they did. They strapped them onto their tanks or whatever. And they put these things in their rucksacks. And they brought them back to the yurt. And they were like, look, water's going to come out of this thing. And
Strap this thing on the wall and turn it on.
Nothing happened. Why? No pipes. And so I believe in many regards the generative energy, I was talking about Zig Ziglar, like this generative energy of wisdom and generative creating, because of the way they think. They can keep creating under any market climate, any circumstance. That's the corporate asset. It's not the how do we do this right now in this moment in time. No, it's how do we do things under any circumstance in any moment in time. What's our worldview and our value system, and how does that drive the way we do things? That is where real wisdom lives. The derivative, like how does this process work, is kind of a commodity. It may work for that moment in time and with that crew, but if you took it like a sink and you stuck it in somebody else's business, they wouldn't even be able to execute on it. Absolutely. It's not as much of a fear as you think. Most of the time, small businesses suffer from friendly fire. It's not the competitors that are kicking their butts. It's not. It's them failing to execute at the highest level of what they collectively know. If they could get it all in one place and do it consistently, they could mostly be unstoppable. It's just the day-to-day grinds them down. People get tired. They have turnover. They lose wisdom. It goes out the door one day. It's stuff that's much more mundane than this big pitched battle against, But honestly, decommoditizing a business is going to be the way you can compete. Because if I, as a kid in my basement, can get on ChatGPT and build a complete operations manual for running a restaurant, could I conceivably compete with you who've been running one for 30 years?
Conceivably. Yeah.
Conceivably, especially if you are the kind of entrepreneur who needs to be there all the time and you get sick or old or tired, then I actually could beat you with my ChatGPT best practices manual. But if you're in it in the way that I'm talking about, there's no competition. You'd always kick my butt because you have real wisdom. And you're continuing to evolve that, continuing to explore new things, keeping your ear to the ground with what your customers want. All that kind of stuff is what we're really talking about when we talk about the owner's value.
Yes.
But that's something that can be deconstructed and learned. The operating system, and this is why entrepreneurs hate process. Like, do we really need a process for using the CRM system? I guess so, but oh my gosh, I have no energy for that. And there's about a zillion things on my to-do list ahead of it. But actually hacking my decision making so that I can teach a young guy how to zig and zag like I do, that's worth millions of dollars in immediate revenue generation and a future exit for me. That could be generational creating wealth for me because I've transferred like my way of being in the world, my decision making, and I can transform that into everything. I mean, really, if you think about it, once you hack that, you can apply it to everything they do. That's why, like Nordstrom, for example, when they have like a commander's intent on how to treat people, there's this fantastic story of this guy that walked up to the counter at a Nordstrom and he had a pair of shoes and he said, is there a possibility I could pay for only one? Look over the counter and the guy's a vet. He's only got one leg. The heads up guy behind the counter says, you're not paying for both shoes. He ends up sourcing the shoe the guy needs from another store. They build an entire program because that guy behind the counter understood what Nordstrom was doing and there was no playbook, no SOP for how to handle that. He knew what was the commander's intent, the vision, the values, those things, and could operate independently. So what I'm getting at is, just to put a little net around this, if you harvest that, the company can head into whatever storm is coming. They'll navigate, they'll adjust, they can be durable that way. If you get like, this is how we handle it today in 2025, I hope this stuff holds up in 3 years, you'll probably be disappointed to learn that the pace of change makes that impossible. The yurt is never ever going to deliver water without pipes. The pipes is really the wisdom.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really passionate
awesome.
about that. You can tell. Being across the desk from amazing entrepreneurs was the privilege of a lifetime. You included, by the way. I mean, I love connecting with you and talking with you. What you're working on is incredible. It unlocks a workforce potential, an economy that is going to be either sidelined or fully activated. And I think we're going to need those people.
Oh, we need them right now more than ever, right?
Yes.
Now more than ever, we need them. Yeah, you can't take the generation of American entrepreneurs and say, you know what, it's cool, just go watch your grandkids' soccer games. We're good. We're good without you. Like we can't do that. We don't. That's not a luxury we have. God knows our country needs that more than ever right now. All right, hey, is that as we wrap it up here? What happens? What do we need to do to help get our clients and our business owners to take action? Does this generally take some kind of red flag event where someone goes so horribly wrong because their process went sideways, or how do we guide people to playbookbuilder.com and say, hey, you really ought to think about this? What are you seeing working right now?
What I'm really encouraged by are the CPAs, other professionals who understand that clients need the leadership to know how to do this. They need guidance and help. And they bake that into a larger process to help them with the exit. And so the relationships that we forge, those introductions come over and we go, we got this part, and we drive for them. So we tackle that piece. I mean, we're turning tribal knowledge into structural capital and helping with the transition. So of course we play an integral role, but it takes the CEPA to recognize that this isn't like leave it up to the founder to figure it out. They need somebody who's done it before. They need a Sherpa who can get them up the mountain, and so they send them our way, and we have either professional services or software, and we can guide them with their own team. And it's such a privilege because they feel so much relief.
Absolutely.
They feel so much relief. There's so much shame and frustration that they don't have the bandwidth to do this. And when they just see how easy it can be, they get so excited. It can be really neat to be a part of that. It's a privilege. I mean, it's corny to say this, my ministry is all these small businesses, these mom and pops in my neighborhood and all over. I think you and I share this. This is a passion of ours. We can have generation impacting wealth transfers. Absolutely. And I want to be a part of that. Like, that's a really worthwhile thing to help with. And it's there. It's hiding in plain sight. And so, the CEPAs want to be real leaders. If they really believe that that's their role, they just bake this into their process and they say, now you're going to work with the plumber, then you're going to work with the electrician. That's how the house gets built. And they send them our way.
Awesome. Well, hey, John, thanks for your time today. You who are listening, playbookbuilder.com, go check it out. In full transparency, I run my platform on Playbook Builder. Been great talking to you, and thanks for sharing your wisdom. And I'm sure we'll talk to you soon. If you're interested in learning more about what you heard, including learning more about becoming a SecondWave advisor, please use the link in the description to visit the website, and you can receive the first few chapters of the book for free.